Hello aspirants, welcome to daily UPSC Current Affairs revision series by Insights IAS. In today's session, we'll cover the Draft Cafe, 3 norms, Exercise Pitch Black 2026, the Proton Exchange Membrane Fuel Cell, Operation Southern Readiness 262, the World Artificial Intelligence Cooperation Organization, and the Investment Friendliness Index. And in mapping, we'll explore India's first geothermal wells at Puga Valley. So without any further delay, let's get started. Let's start with something every car buyer in India will eventually feel the effect of: the Draft Cafe, 3 norms. Here's the context. The Ministry of Power, alongside the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, has officially released the Draft Corporate Average Fuel Economy 3 norms for public and industry consultation. So what exactly are these norms? CAFE norms are regulatory mandates that require automakers to meet a predefined average level of fuel economy and carbon dioxide emissions across their entire annual fleet of vehicles sold. Now, here's the important nuance. This isn't about scoring individual car models one by one. It's about the average across the whole fleet a company sells in a year. That distinction matters because it means a manufacturer can sell a few gas guzzlers as long as enough efficient or electric vehicles balance out the average. Now, let's quickly walk through the history because this phased rollout is genuinely testable. Phase 1, CAFE 1, was implemented in financial year 2017 to 18, establishing the entry baseline for structured fleet efficiency tracking. Phase 2, CAFE 2, rolled out in FY 2022 to 23, tightening emission parameters further based on an average vehicle weight constant. And now we have Phase 3, CAFE 3, which was circulated in July 2026 and is scheduled to take formal effect on the 1st of April 2027, running all the way through FY 2031 to 32. These regulations are administered under the Energy Conservation Act, and their broader aim is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, improve air quality, and cut oil imports by promoting cleaner vehicles. Now, coming to the key features of CAFE 3, and this is genuinely dense, so let's slow down and go feature by feature. First, there are progressively tightened carbon targets. Fleet average targets will shrink from 3.996 liters per 100 kilometers. That's 94.76 grams of carbon dioxide per kilometer in financial year 2027 to 28, down to a much stricter 3.327 liters per 100 kilometers or 78.9 grams of CO2 per kilometers by FY 2031 to 32. Hold that number range in mind, it's a classic prelims elimination point. Second, there's a shift to the global WLTP testing cycle. The draft formalizes India's migration away from the laboratory-confined Modified Indian Driving Cycle or MIDC to the globally synchronized Worldwide Harmonized Light Vehicles Test Procedure or WLTP, which better reflects real-world on-road driving conditions rather than just lab conditions. Third, there are flexible multi-year compliance blocks. Instead of enforcing rigid annual penalties, compliance will now be calculated over 2 larger blocks, a 3-year block covering FY 28 to 30, followed by a 2-year block covering FY 30 to 32, giving automakers room to backload their EV launches strategically. Now pause here because this next feature is genuinely a first for India. There are first ever carbon neutrality factors or CNFs. E20, which is 20% ethanol blended petrol, receives an 8% reduction benefit, and this jumps up significantly to 22.3%. For flex fuel ethanol vehicles and flex fuel strong hybrids, that's a big jump worth remembering. There are also revised super credit multipliers. Battery electric vehicles and range-extended EVs receive a 3x multiplier. Plug-in hybrids get 2.5x. And strong hybrids are scaled back to 1.6x. Do keep these multipliers straight in your notes, since UPSC could easily test which vehicle type gets which multiplier. There's also a market-based credit trading system, introducing an emission permit ecosystem where manufacturers who exceed their targets earn compliance credits that they can either bank for later or sell to other manufacturers. And finally, there are expanded technology derogation credits. Automakers can claim up to 9 grams of carbon dioxide per kilometer in compliance benefits, by embedding 12 approved fuel-saving technologies, including automatic engine start-stop devices, regenerative braking setups, smart alternators, and tire pressure monitoring systems. So, to quickly recap for your exam, CAFE 3 takes effect from the 1st of April 2027, tightening fleet average emissions from 94.76 to 78.9 grams of carbon dioxide per kilometer by financial year 2031 to 32. Remember the shift to the WLTP testing cycle, the new carbon neutrality factors for ethanol vehicles, and the super credit multipliers, 3x for BEVs, 2.5x for plug-in hybrids, and 1.6x for strong hybrids. Now, let's move to a defense topic with a strong Indo-Pacific flavor, Exercise Pitch Black 2026. Here's the context. An Indian Air Force contingent comprising 4 Rafale fighter jets, 2 C-17 Globemaster, 3 transport aircraft, and over 120 air warriors has arrived in Australia to participate in this exercise. So, what exactly is Pitch Black? It's a large-scale premier biennial warfare drill focused on complex, high-end multinational air combat training. In fact, it stands as one of the Indo-Pacific region's largest collective air defense and strike simulation exercises. It's hosted by the Royal Australian Air Force, or RAAF. Now, on participants, this year's edition is genuinely massive. The 2026 edition features active forces and military personnel from 20 nations. Core participants deploying aircraft include the United States, Japan, India, Indonesia, Singapore, France, Germany, Spain, South Korea, Thailand, the Philippines, Papua New Guinea, and host Australia, alongside embedded personnel from nations like the UK, Canada, and New Zealand. That's a genuinely wide coalition, so don't be surprised if a question asks you to identify participating nations. Let's go through the key features of the exercise now. It has a 3-week operational timeline, running from July 20 to the 7th of August 2026, marking the conclusion of a high-tempo training block in Northern Australia. It involves a massive fleet outlay, featuring up to 100 fighter and support aircraft, alongside more than 2,500 military personnel executing complex, realistic air combat scenarios. There's also strategic tri-base operations. Flight maneuvers are launched concurrently from 3 key Royal Australian Air Force bases, Darwin, Tyndall, and Amberley. Now here's a genuinely fresh detail for this edition, Next Generation Technical Debuts. The 2026 edition marks the first ever participation of Japan's F-35 Lightning II stealth fighters and Indonesia's T-50I Golden Eagle jets in this collective drill. That's a strong prelims hook, first-time participation of specific aircraft types. And there's realistic large force employment, or LFE. Forces divide into simulated red air, the aggressor forces, and blue air, the coalition forces, to practice day and night air combat, tactical bombing, and aerial refueling maneuvers. On strategic significance, this exercise strengthens coordination among participating air forces through common communication systems, joint operations, and aerial refueling practices. And it reinforces a free, open, and stable Indo-Pacific by improving collective deterrence and regional security cooperation among partner nations. So, to quickly recap for your exam, Exercise Pitch Black 2026 is hosted by the Royal Australian Air Force, runs from July 20 to August 7, and involves 20 nations, over 100 aircraft, and more than 2,500 personnel. Remember the 3 RAAF bases, Darwin, Tyndall, and Amberley, and the first-time participation of Japan's F-35 and Indonesia's T-50I in this exercise. Now, let's dive into something genuinely fascinating from the world of clean energy, the Proton Exchange Membrane, or PEM, fuel cell. The context here connects directly to a story we've covered before. The Prime Minister of India flagged off India's first hydrogen-powered train, the NaMo Green Rail, on its official maiden run along the 89 km Jind-Sonipat section in Haryana. So, what exactly is this fuel cell technology powering the train? A proton exchange membrane fuel cell is a compact electrochemical power generator that converts the chemical energy of hydrogen fuel directly into clean electricity. In the context of the NaMo Green Rail, think of it as a decentralized, zero-emission mini power plant carried right on board the train to power its traction motors. The technical specifications were drafted by the Research, Designs and Standards Organization, or RDSO, while the system itself was engineered and integrated by Medha servo drives. Now, let's slow down and actually understand how this works, step by step, because this mechanism is exactly the kind of thing Prelims loves testing. It starts with hydrogen splitting at the anode. Hydrogen gas stored in the train's cylinders is fed into the anode side of the fuel cell, where a catalyst splits the hydrogen molecules into protons and electrons. Then comes the membrane barrier. A specialized polymer membrane allows only the positively charged protons to pass through to the cathode, while blocking the electrons entirely. Now here's the clever part: electricity generation, forced to find an alternative route. Those blocked electrons travel through an external circuit instead. And that's exactly what generates the continuous electrical current needed to drive the train's wheels. And finally, there's clean cathode recombination. At the cathode, the protons and electrons recombine with oxygen drawn from the surrounding air, and the only resulting byproducts are completely harmless water vapor and heat. Genuinely elegant chemistry doing real mechanical work. Now, coming to the key technical features of this onboard power system. There's a hybrid energy storage architecture. The train features two specialized hydrogen driving power cars, or DPCs, at each end, which combine the PEM fuel cells with high-capacity lithium iron phosphate, or LFP, batteries to ensure stable power delivery even under fluctuating track loads. There's also a high-pressure refueling matrix. Fuel is drawn from onboard storage cylinders that are refueled at a regulated pressure of 350 bars from an on-site 500-bar green hydrogen electrolysis compression facility located at Jind. Now, safety is obviously a huge concern with hydrogen, so pay attention here. There's fail-safe leak protection. Because hydrogen is highly flammable, invisible, and odorless, the system features continuous leak, flame, and heat sensors, linked to an automatic supply shutoff system that responds instantly, without requiring any manual human input. And there's continuous canopy ventilation. The power cars are built with active continuous ventilation loops, designed to immediately dilute and vent any trace hydrogen gas into the open atmosphere, preventing dangerous gas buildup. On significance, this technology replaces diesel trains on non-electrified routes with hydrogen-powered trains, reducing emissions and supporting India's net zero goals. And it creates genuine demand for green hydrogen, encouraging investment in hydrogen production, refueling infrastructure, and clean energy technologies more broadly. So, to quickly recap for your exam, the PEM fuel cell powers the NaMo green rail by splitting hydrogen at the anode, routing electrons through an external circuit, and recombining them with oxygen at the cathode to produce only water and heat. Remember, the RDSO Medha servo drives collaboration, the 350-bar refueling pressure from the 500-bar Jind facility, and the two hydrogen driving power cars, combining fuel cells. Now, let's move to a maritime security topic, Operation Southern Readiness 262. The context is that the Ministry of Defence has announced that the Indian Navy will host this 4-day multinational maritime security training engagement in Kochi. So, what exactly is this operation? It's a high-level, multi-domain international maritime security training engagement. And here's an important distinction. Rather than standard combat maneuvers, this event blends rigorous classroom instruction, realistic simulator-based scenarios, and actual hands-on sea deployment all together to bring uniform tactical skills across global partner navies. It's hosted by the Indian Navy at the Southern Naval Command in Kochi, Kerala, and it's conducted in close partnership with the Combined Maritime Forces, or CMF, a premier global maritime coalition comprising more than 40 member nations. Now, coming to the key features of this training engagement. There's integrated task force oversight, orchestrated by the Indian Navy-led CTF 154, which coordinates maritime security specialists from across the CMF's 40-plus country alliance to exchange operational best practices. There's a strong focus on tackling modern asymmetric threats, with specialized educational sessions covering complex maritime law, counter-narcotics operations, force protection, and neutralizing asymmetric threats more broadly. There's also a frontier uncrewed technology focus, including customized modules dedicated to maritime uncrewed systems, meaning drones and UUVs, optimizing how partner nations track threat footprints using automated technology. There are state-of-the-art simulator drills, leveraging the Southern Naval Command's modern training infrastructure for highly immersive navigation and tactical coordination training. And there's live practical boarding and survival exposure. Participants undergo live operational training on Indian naval warships, covering high-risk boarding procedures, damage control, firefighting, and survival at sea protocols. On significance, this exercise showcases the Indian Navy's advanced training infrastructure, enhancing its role as a global hub for maritime capacity building. And it improves coordination, information sharing, and joint operations among partner navies, helping counter piracy, smuggling, and other maritime security threats. So, to quickly recap for your exam, Operation Southern Readiness 262 is hosted by the Indian Navy at the Southern Naval Command in Kochi, in partnership with the Combined Maritime Forces 40+ nations. Remember, it's coordinated by CTF 154 and its focus areas span maritime law, counter-narcotics, uncrewed systems, and live boarding and survival training. Now let's turn to an important international relations development, the World Artificial Intelligence Cooperation Organization, or WAICO. The context is that China has launched WAICO in Shanghai, positioning it as a global AI governance platform for the Global South and developing countries. So what exactly is WAICO? It's a China-led international AI governance platform aimed at promoting AI cooperation, capacity building, and common governance standards among developing countries. Its headquarters are in Shanghai, China, and its aim is to promote inclusive AI development, strengthen international cooperation, build AI capacity in developing countries, and establish a collaborative AI governance framework led specifically by the Global South. Now, coming to its key features, it has a strong Global South focus, established with 30 participating countries, mainly from Asia, Africa, and Latin America, to strengthen AI cooperation among them. On capacity building, China will provide 5,000 AI training opportunities and will establish joint AI cooperation centers with ASEAN, the African Union, BRICS, the SCO, the League of Arab States, and CELAC. That's a genuinely wide network of partner organizations worth holding onto for prelims. It also emphasizes open source AI promotion, encouraging open source AI models, technology sharing, and collaborative AI development. And it proposes what's essentially an alternative AI governance model, promoting a framework that emphasizes digital sovereignty, multilateralism, and opposition to technology restrictions. There's also a clear strategic AI ecosystem angle here. WAICO supports the adoption of Chinese AI models as alternatives to Western platforms such as ChatGPT and Claude, which tells you this is as much about geopolitics as it is about technology. On significance, WAICO strengthens China's influence in global AI governance and deepens technological partnerships with the Global South. And it offers an alternative AI ecosystem, one based on open source collaboration and digital sovereignty, positioned as a counterweight to Western AI platforms. So, to quickly recap for your exam, WAICO is China's newly launched AI governance platform headquartered in Shanghai, with 30 participating countries, mostly from Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Remember, China's pledge of 5,000 AI training opportunities, its joint cooperation centers with ASEAN, the African Union, BRICS, SCO, League of Arab States, and CELAC, and its positioning as an alternative to Western AI platforms. Now, let's move to an economy topic with genuinely useful data, the Investment Friendliness Index, or IFI. The context is that NITI Aayog has launched this inaugural index to benchmark and promote state-level business reforms under the Viksit Bharat at 2047 vision. So, what exactly is the IFI? It's a comprehensive, structured, and evidence-based macroeconomic assessment framework. It evaluates how effectively India's subnational governments, that is, the states and union territories, create, enable, and sustain an environment that attracts domestic and foreign private capital. It's developed and published by NITI Aayog, the National Institution for Transforming India, and its aim is to strengthen the spirit of competitive and cooperative federalism across subnational governance. Now, let's look at the criteria and pillars used for evaluation, because this is genuinely dense and worth going through carefully. The index covers all 28 states and 8 union territories and evaluates investment attractiveness across 8 pillars. These are infrastructure, business climate, resources, government policy, regulatory ease, institutional environment, financial health, and environmental resilience. Pause here for a second and try to hold all 8 of those in your head together, since this is a classic list-based prelims question. Now, coming to the key features of the index itself. There's a 4-tier performance banding. States and UTs are grouped into 4 clear performance cohorts based on their cumulative scores. Top performers scoring above 50, front-runners scoring between 45 and 50, emerging performers scoring 40 up to but excluding 45, and aspiring states scoring below 40. There's also equitable peer group comparisons, recognizing that geography and economic scale differ vastly across India. The index splits regions into 3 distinct peer groups: large states, hilly and northeastern states, and union territories and city-states. And there's investor perception integration too. The index incorporates primary responses from 1,850 active investors, giving it a genuinely ground-level, real-world flavor rather than being purely desk research. Now, let's go through the key findings, because these numbers are genuinely important. Only 5 states scored above 50 as top performers: Gujarat with 56.6, Maharashtra with 53.7, Tamil Nadu with 53.3, Goa with 53.1, and Odisha. On the drivers of success, Gujarat excelled in ports and infrastructure, Maharashtra led in business climate and PE and VC investment, and Tamil Nadu stood out in exports and manufacturing. Now here's a genuinely striking figure worth locking in on FDI concentration. Maharashtra, Karnataka, Gujarat, Delhi, and Tamil Nadu together account for 85% of India's FDI, while the Northeast receives less than 1%. That's a stark regional imbalance, and exactly the kind of statistic UPSC likes to test. On investment trends, total investment reached 29.9% of GDP in FY 2025, led by government infrastructure and household real estate spending. And on the private capex gap, private capital expenditure at just 8.7% of GDP continued to lag behind public investment, highlighting the need to boost private sector participation going forward. So, to quickly recap for your exam, the Investment Friendliness Index, launched by NITI Aayog, covers all 28 states and 8 UTs across 8 pillars, from infrastructure to environmental resilience. Remember that only 5 states, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Goa, and Odisha, crossed the top performer threshold of 50, and that 5 states together capture 85% of India's FDI, while the Northeast gets less than 1%. Finally, let's turn to today's mapping topic, and this one's a genuinely exciting energy milestone: India's first geothermal wells at Puga Valley. The context is that the Ladakh Lieutenant Governor officially commissioned India's first and deepest twin geothermal wells at Puga Valley in eastern Ladakh, executed by the ONGC Energy Centre, and these 1,000-meter deep wells will serve as the technical backbone for India's first 1-megawatt demonstration-scale geothermal power plant. So, what exactly is this project? The Puga Valley system is India's pioneer breakthrough into geothermal energy, the process of tapping clean, round-the-clock power from natural heat reservoirs trapped beneath the Earth's crust. The facility is situated at an extreme altitude of over 14,000 feet in the Puga Valley of eastern Ladakh. Now, let's understand how these geothermal wells actually form, because the geology here is genuinely fascinating. It starts with a tectonic and volcanic heat source. The Indian plate's ongoing collision with the Eurasian plate forms structural fractures, faults, and deep-seated magmatic activity along the Indus suture zone. And this proximity brings internal mantle heat very close to the shallow crust. Then there's deep fluid circulation. Meteoric water, essentially melted snow and glaciers, seeps deep into these rock fractures where it gets superheated by the underlying hot rocks. And finally, there's high pressure ascent. Because hot water is less dense, it's driven back upward toward the surface under high pressure, trapping superheated fluids and steam inside permeable deep reservoirs, or sometimes erupting at the surface entirely as natural hot springs and sulfur fumaroles. Now, coming to the key features of the Puga geothermal wells themselves. There's an extreme target depth. The two newly completed wells were successfully drilled down to a target depth of 1,000 meters. There's promising temperature profiling. Engineers recorded a high temperature of 135 degrees Celsius at a shallow depth of just 400 meters, with thermal output expected to exceed 200 to 240 degrees Celsius in the deepest sections of the reservoir. Hold that temperature range in mind, it's a genuinely striking prelims detail. There's also rapid high-altitude drilling, successfully completing 2 geothermal wells under extreme high-altitude conditions, which demonstrates India's growing capability in advanced geothermal exploration. And there's 1 megawatt electric pilot support. The infrastructure will immediately feed steam into India's first 1 megawatt electric demonstration pilot plant, laying the foundation for an expanded, multi-megawatt commercial deployment grid down the line. On significance, this project delivers 24/7 baseload power, reducing dependence on diesel and improving energy security in remote Ladakh. And it replaces diesel generators with clean geothermal energy, advancing India's net zero goals while protecting the fragile Himalayan ecosystem. So, to quickly recap for your exam, India's first and deepest geothermal wells at Puga Valley, drilled to 1,000 meters by the ONGC Energy Center, recorded temperatures of 135 degrees Celsius at 400 meters, with deeper sections expected to exceed 200 to 240 degrees Celsius. Remember its location along the Indus Suture Zone in eastern Ladakh and its role as the backbone for India's first 1 megawatt demonstration-scale geothermal power plant. And that brings us to the end of today's Prelims in Focus. In today's session, we covered the Draft Cafe 3 norms from GS Paper 3, Environment and Economy, Exercise Pitch Black 2026 from GS Paper 3, Defense and Security, the Proton Exchange Membrane Fuel Cell from GS Paper 3, Science and Technology, Operation Southern Readiness 262 from GS Paper 3, Defense and Security, the World Artificial Intelligence Cooperation Organization from GS Paper 2, International Relations, the Investment Friendliness Index from GS Paper 3, Economy, and India's first geothermal wells at Puga Valley under mapping, an important topic for the UPSC Prelims examination. For the complete current affairs article and today's practice MCQs, visit insightsonindia.com using the link given in the description. Also, subscribe to the Insights IAS YouTube channel and join our official Telegram group for regular UPSC-related updates and learning resources. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you again in the next session.